Alrighty, so before I do this season preview of CF Montreal, I want to first say happy Super Bowl Sunday to everybody. In fact, the Super Bowl actually just concluded about 20 minutes ago at the time of this recording, and I also want to congratulate the Kansas City Chiefs once again winning the Super Bowl, although I'm pretty sure the rest of America and not Taylor Swift fans are happy about the outcome, and I also know that pretty much my entire neighborhood is definitely not happy about this income. In fact, it is eerily quiet right now outside, and I can understand. I'm pretty sure a lot of people in my neighborhood, and even my neighbor who's a big 49ers fans, are kind of in a little disbelief and kind of in mourning. And by the way, before you ask, I am not a Niners fan, which is why I'm not really in that mourning stage. And in some way, I was kind of in a dilemma to decide, should I want to see the Chiefs win or should I see the Niners win? Because if the Chiefs win, then I won't see like fireworks going off outside and just loud noises going off outside. I have to kind of warn you guys before I do the season preview. But on the other hand, if the Niners win, that maybe is kind of a win for America, because I know a lot of people did not want to see the Chiefs, and especially Taylor Swift and all those Swifties of winning the Super Bowl. But that being said, going back now to MLS, that's kind of me enough talk about the Super Bowl itself, and pretty much spent the most I've talked about the NFL on this channel than I've done in a video. But going back to now talk about CF Montreal and their upcoming season. So, CF Montreal, we knew last season was going to be a regression season, but I just felt like last season was such a wasted season. I mean, I get it. Yes, they lost some of their key players, but, hiring Hernan Lasada and especially the tactics that he used to implement this CF Montreal team, it just never makes sense. And it was no surprise that last season they missed out on the playoffs and kind of almost followed the same narrative that this team has always been, which is a team that always are competing for playoffs and are right there in terms of making the playoffs, and then they fall apart at the worst moment in the latter part of the season. But now heading into this season, it feels like there's new hope for this Montreal side. And just like what I said about Columbus, where I think their best signing in the offseason doesn't come with a player, but actually hiring a head coach and bring Wilfried Nancy to Columbus, I'm going to say the same thing for Montreal too. Bring Laurent Courtois from the Columbus Crew, and that he of course was part of the assistant head coach for the Crew, and also part of that Columbus Crew team that did very well in MLS Next Pro. And that what I like about what Laurent Courtois will brought to this team is that he's going to bring that similar style that Wilfried Nancy run this team back in 2022 and make them not only got the most point in their franchise history in the regular season, but also winning a playoff game and play some of the most beautiful soccer I have ever seen Montreal has play. And with the way that they bring back the system, and they do have the player to do so, it could be a sense that Montreal could spring a little bit of a surprise heading into this season in the Eastern Conference. Now, that being said, last season, as I said, it was a huge disappointment. 12-5-17 was their record. They finished with 41 points, and they were actually the first team out in terms of the playoffs, finishing in 10th place in the standings. The last playoff appearance was 2022. The last playoff win was also 2022. They won a playoff game against Orlando City before falling to NYCFC in the Eastern Conference semifinal. But in terms of MLS Cup, they have never won it. In fact, they have never appeared in an MLS Cup. The closest they came was 2016, and I said this before, and I'll say it again. To this day, that is still the greatest Eastern Conference final two-legged affair that we have ever seen in league history. I know last year the Hell is Real Derby was pretty close in terms of that, but nothing compared to what we saw in that two-legged affair, especially leg number two of that Canadian Classic. I mean, that was just something like a movie the script, and just the scenes when Toronto was able to score those goals in extra time. I mean, that is probably the loudest I've seen a fan base celebrate after a goal that was scored. That looked like something that you see in Europe with all the celebration that is going on. Although, unfortunately, if you're a Montreal fan watching this, I do apologize. I have to kind of mention that because they were on the wrong end of that that true Canadian classic, and one of the greatest, actually not even one of the greatest. I'm doing a displeasure. That was the greatest Eastern Conference final we have ever seen in league history. But that being said, in terms of the transfers, so they definitely make some big signing this offseason. One of their big signing is bringing Dominic Yankov. He's a Bulgarian player coming from the Goretz, and it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to do. And especially, he's a guy that they bought in as that number 10 player, and kind of what they are hoping that he's going to be like that Georgi Mihailovic kind of player that will be the main playmaker for this team. They also brought in another number 9 in Mateus Corcaro, and also bring back Raheem Edwards to Montreal. But probably one of the biggest signings that they did this offseason, and they just recently did this, is bring the king to their team. Joseph Martinez is now a CF Montreal player, and as I said before, if I would have told you a couple years ago that Joseph Martinez, in a couple years down the line, will leave Atlanta United, go to Inter Miami, and then eventually join CF Montreal, you would think that would never happen in a million year in life. In fact, if you're a CF Montreal fan, if I would have told you you would be getting Joseph Martinez just a couple years ago, I don't think they would have believed that. Now, obviously, Joseph Martinez is still not the same player that he was before he suffered that torn ACL injury. But yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how he's going to fit, and that I do think that there's still some magic left in him where he could still be a 10 plus goal scorer for this team, even if his best day is kind of past him in MLS. They also brought back Sebastian Britza in goal here, and then they also drafted Grayson Doty in the super draft. They also bought in Juan as part of that trade of bringing Aaron Herrera to DC United, and then receiving Juan. Though again, that feels like a very weird kind of signing, considering Aaron Herrera was very good last season, and Juan, as I mentioned, as good as he is in terms of being a speedy wingback, that's pretty much all it is to his game. He's very fast, but he doesn't have that end product. And they also got Joaquin Sosa and Rita Zorha as the two other signings that they bought this off season. Now, in terms of players that no longer with this team, as I mentioned, Aaron Herrera go to DC United as part of the Juan trade. They also don't have Romel Kyoto anymore, which it's kind of sad to see the Kyoto time with Montreal has come to an end, because I thought he really had some good season for this Montreal team. Really reignite his career when he joined Montreal, but injuries kind of ruined him, and not to mention he's kind of hitting the wrong end of 30. They also lost James Pantemis, who is the new backup goalkeeper for the Portland Timbers. They also lost Ahmad Hamdi, John and now Asi, Eliza, Chanoso Ofor, Elias Elias, Zachary Brogiat, Mako Mayevic, good riddance, obviously, and then Sean Rea as another player that is no longer with this Montreal side. Now, looking at the preseason, they actually have played 75% of their preseason game. They actually only have one more game left in the preseason. They drew 1-1 against Minnesota United, and they were actually on verge of losing that game if it wasn't for them scoring very late to equalize in that one. But they did lose 2-1 to Atlanta, and they got absolutely destroyed by the Colorado Rapids. Remember how I said the Colorado Rapids was a team that I had concern in terms of goal scoring? Man, this preseason they are scoring goals left and right, and maybe I might be look back of what I said about the lack of goal scoring, and how I feel like maybe that wasn't really the weakness. Or maybe they probably watched that video up of me saying that, and they decided to take that personal, which in other words, thank you Colorado Rapids, and also thank you Chris Armas of watching my video. But the last game that they will have in the preseason, they're going to be played against the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Now, looking at the first 10 game of the season, so they're not going to play a home game at the Olympic Stadium. I think they've mentioned that they are no longer going to be playing game at the Olympic Stadium, which I think that's good riddance, because the Olympic Stadium, not only that stadium is so outdated, but it is clearly not suitable in terms of hosting soccer match. I mean, if you want to talk about the worst pitch soccer pitch, or the worst playing condition in an MLS stadium. I mean, I know a lot of people will point out Yankee Stadium because of the baseball dimension and stuff like that, but I argue Olympic Stadium is probably be even worse, because that turf that they install is just concrete. Like, players have complained about how bad that turf is, and how that turf is kind of reminiscent to the AstroTurf that we've seen American sports team used to use back in the 90s, and you know how bad AstroTurf was, especially to knees, and especially to torn ACL. So good on Montreal, the fact that they realized that, yeah, we are not playing at the Olympic Stadium. And not to mention, the Olympic Stadium is just such an outdated stadium, and that the condition of it just looked very damp and just sad. So because of that, Montreal is going to be opening their season playing on the road for their first 6 games because you can't really play at Stade Saputo in March since it's in the winter. Though I would argue if Minnesota can do it, come on Montreal. I mean you could do it as well. And I mean I understand Allianz Field does have a heated pitch, but come on Montreal. I'm pretty sure you can play in the cold weather if Minnesota can do so. And I know Montreal winter can be harsh, but you can say the same thing about Minnesota harsh winter too, and they're playing it in March as well. But as I said, they're playing their first 6 games on the road, starting with Orlando City, FC Dallas, Inter Miami, Chicago Fire, DC United, and the Seattle Sounders. And anytime I've mentioned when a team goes through a lengthy road trip to start the season, it's all about surviving and trying to stay afloat before you get to choose the part of the schedule where you're going to get a lot of home games. And really they don't really get a lot of home games in their first 10 game of the season. Only 2 of their first 10 games is at Stade Saputo, because after them finally ending their 6 game road trip, they get a reward to play against FC Cincinnati and Orlando City. So yeah, again, the schedule is just brutal for Montreal to begin the season. And then to make things worse, they go on the road to play against the defending MLS Cup champion, that is the Columbus Crew, before finishing the first game of the season to play against Nashville SC on the road. Now, when you look at the Post Leagues Cup, they do get a little bit more games at home. In fact, I think 6 out of their last 10 games is going to be at homes. They start with them playing at home against New England before going on the road again to play against FC Cincinnati. Then they play against Charlotte FC before going on the road to play against New England. So they're going to be playing New England twice in a quick succession. But then they return home to play against Chicago, playing at home against the San Jose Earthquake, going on the road to play against Atlanta, going on the road to play against Charlotte. So again, Charlotte's another team that they play in quick succession as well before they finish the season on decision day facing against NYCFC. Now, looking at the strength of this team, again, it's the coaching, and that Laurent Courtois coming into this team. It's gonna make. I have a feeling it's gonna make a very similar impact to what we saw Wilfried Nancy brought to the Columbus Crew. And I also think that the depth of their team is pretty good. I think the only area that their depth is not really good is the right wing back position, but otherwise their depth is pretty strong, and that they're pretty much too deep in every position. And some of the players that is second string are considered to be MLS caliber players too. So they really built themselves a relatively good roster. But that being said, obviously the big weakness of this team is that you mentioned you know how I mentioned MLS caliber kind of talent, but I didn't mention the fact that they are kind of like superstar kind of player, and that's kind of what I think is lacking on this Montreal side, and especially goal scoring too. With this team, was having a lot of problem in terms of goal scoring. Now I think that's gonna definitely be a little bit better considering the Laurent Courtois uh, way is that means that they're going to push more man forward, so that means they can overwhelm team and score more goals. And as I mentioned, they do have the talent to do so. Though again, those talent again going back to their number 10 in Dominic Yankov. I don't know if he can be like that Cucho Hernandez kind of player that Columbus was kind of leading the line, or even that Georgi Mihailovic kind of player that Montreal has had. And the same goes for Mateus Corquero or even Joseph Martinez as well. Can those guys be that lethal number 9 that they, of course, had? And then, of course, the defense is going to be an issue for this team. And again, one of the big issue with Wilfried Nancy system that Laurent Courtois, of course, is implement is the fact that you are going to really expose your defense a lot. And with the way that Montreal was not good defensively, even under Hern Lasada, I can't imagine how the defense is going to be even with this. And that I have a feeling they're gonna be a fun team to watch in terms of goal scoring, but they're also gonna leak a lot of goals this season. And this is also where Jonathan Seawas is gonna have to step up even more. I mean, I thought last season, as much as I know he gave up a lot of goals, he was still a solid goalkeeper, and in some way he kind of bailed out Montreal a couple of times with how bad the back line, of course, is, and that he's going to have to do it again because of the new system that they run. And I won't be surprised Montreal could be giving up 50 plus goals and maybe give up a ton of goals again. And that could also be a problem of why many people are uncertain that this team is ready to compete for playoffs because, well, the Wilfried Nancy system works when you have high end talent like Columbus had. When you have kind of uncertain talent that maybe can break through, that's not good enough in terms of trying to keep your team to get wins and also push your way into the playoff conversation, which is very hard to do so in the Eastern Conference because we have a lot of good teams that is right now in the East. And then, of course, the expectation again, playoff contention again, and that's kind of the case with all of these teams. That is kind of like, again, I feel like in the East, there's like two different tiers. There's the top six kind of team, which I think those are the team that I really think are considered to be MLS Cup caliber. But then you get to the bottom part of the standings, and even in the mid tier, those are kind of the spot where we could see maybe the last three spots that will be fighting for. Although minus probably Toronto too, because they are clearly rebuilding. So yeah, I think they're going to be one of those teams that's going to be in playoff contention, and they're going to really hope that this upcoming season will be kind of similar to what we saw in 2022. Again, kind of came out of nowhere of becoming a really good team, and it's mainly because of the system that Laurent Courtois that's going to be implemented, very similar to what Wilfried Nancy does, and it's going to be just as successful as what we saw in the 2022 season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at CF Montreal in this season preview. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Montreal fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and expectation for this upcoming season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys hit a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.